Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Transforming Life series. I am your host, Michael Stent. This afternoon, we are here to look at a subtopic under the theme Preparing for Marriage. We have an able panelist who will be discussing the matters affecting that and to take and answer all your relevant questions. We ask that everyone show due respect to all members of the panelists and all our viewers. I ask of you to send in your questions through the various platforms, through the Zoom forum and YouTube, as well as 1-876 436 5057. I repeat, 1-876 436 5057, and we'll be able to take all your questions. This afternoon, to share with us before we get into our program properly is Dr. Curtis Fox, the senior pastor for the Conyers Seventh-day Adventist Church. And this afternoon, he will be speaking with us briefly on the matter of the role that culture plays in infidelity in marriage. And this has to do with the program that we aired last week. So for the next 8 to 10 minutes, Dr. Fox will take us through that role so that we can understand better. And thereafter, we'll move into today's topic. Over to you, Dr. Fox. Thank you. Dr. Fox, could you unmute
Yes.
your mic, Dr. Fox?
Yes, sir. I am most eager to participate in the conversation that would happen after now, but on account of some of the discussions that we had last week, I was asked to talk briefly about the role of culture in infidelity. And I just wanted to reflect just a wee bit on this, and then we will perhaps move on with the program. Sitting in my office just about a few months ago were two people who came in, and they were there on account of the concern of the wife about the infidelity of her husband. As I sat with them and listened to the story, it seemed to me, from what she was saying, that there was a continuing situation going on with them since their marriage for about 24 years, that he was always involved, engaged in extramarital relations. And some of those she was fully aware of. Some of those came to light. Some of them she just figured out based on his behaviors that he was up to his old ways again. When she came in, they were both there, but when she spoke about the issue, it seems to me that she was pretty much unperturbed by it to some extent, but that she wished that this issue or problem would go away. As I talked to both of them and listened, and especially when I heard him retort, he was concerned that his wife shared concern about his behavior, for after all, he was just a man operating out of his own cultural context. At one point, I interjected by saying, well, I'm not sure if we have any problems here. And she wondered why I'd said that. And then I pointed out that it seemed to me from the way she was relating to the situation that she really did not expect that her husband would be faithful in the marital context. She would like it if she thought it was a good idea as somebody who became Americanized. She thought it would be better to have her one husband all to herself. But in my mind, the way she was talking about it, she really expected that he would do what he was doing and had a measure of contentment around that issue. I found it strange that she would act that way. But then I had to reflect on the fact that her attitude toward her husband's infidelity was in great measure shaped by the culture from which she came, and his attitude toward her concern was also a reflection of their cultural context. I try to help them to understand it, that in maybe another culture, it maybe would not provoke the same level of anxiety, but certainly in an American culture, there would be lots of challenges associated with that, and they needed to find ways to deal with the cultural pressures in which they were living. If I told you that this was the first time I had seen this, or the last time, I would not be speaking the truth today. The truth is, I see that kind of thing happening a lot. Now, in 1994, I began studying Caribbean families, and I can refer you to some of the descriptions of Caribbean families, maybe by the work of Simi in 1946 in Jamaica, and in 1971, there were those who studied in Trinidad and Tobago and around the Caribbean, Guyana, and so on. But there have been some scholars who wrote about the Caribbean family. And one of the things they say as a descriptor of Caribbean family in the Caribbean is that it was loose conjugal ties. I did not particularly like that description, as I am myself from the Caribbean, but as I studied it, I recognized that they did not understand fully the nature of family function in the Caribbean. And what they were describing to a great extent was the culture of poverty. That is, people who are lower down on the socioeconomic scale tend to subsist in relationships in ways that are very peculiar. However, I want to say that there is some veracity to the idea that there is a lot of loose conjugal ties happening in the Caribbean, and there are all kinds of names that we give to that. Friending, for example, is a typical word used in the Southern Caribbean. Now, you know, and I know, that in a lot of cases, funeral service for a Caribbean man, and I'm speaking in generalities, can be a revelation seminar for his family. And that 3 to 4 to 5 children can show up laying claim to dad and his estate. That is not atypical. So we perhaps could admit that really there is some veracity to this. Somehow, something about how we have organized our lives have led people to believe that it is okay to have more than one, so to speak, and that many women have acclimated to that reality. And so people organize their lives around what you might call polygyny that somehow seem to be very typical of our culture. Now, there is something we call the marriage squeeze. The marriage squeeze is an idea that the way people relate to one another is also the way men and women relate to one another is a function of the disproportion in the eligibles. In other words, there are more women to men. When there are more women to men in any context, the men's value go up and the women's value go down. And if you look closely at the impact of that in functioning, and even when we come to talk about dating and marriage and so on and pre-marriage stuff, you would see that this factor is a very factor. When men are in short supply, their value essentially goes up. So patriarchy runs rampant. And many men feel that they don't have to do all they can do to keep the one woman they have, or that the other women do need them, which provoke sometimes some challenging relationships. I remember I was asked to write a chapter of a book. I declined It was called Polygyny, a Viable Option for African American Women, because they were toying in family theory about this same reality. But I see this reality very rife in the Caribbean. Now, when we talk about the dominance in the role of men over women, and that is men having prerogatives that beyond what women have in our society, and the influence of patriarchy in our society, we see that somehow these issues play some part in the way people organize their lives in the context of relationships. So I might agree that really what we see in the Caribbean are loose conjugal ties. We see a disproportion in the eligibles between men and women. We see a cultural context where men sometimes think that they have prerogatives over women and that they can have more than one, and that this woman will be okay with it so long as he brings home the money. And I hear these things. Now, when you think about the influence of society on people, when you think about the fact that people grow up in such an environment where they see men acting this way toward women and or women accepting the behaviors of men, you could see that there is a cultural context where this seems to be an expected behavior, which then provokes these kinds of behaviors and allow them to fester and or multiply. So I think when we do family relationships in the Caribbean, we have to be mindful and check for the influence of culture and what we will call social learning, social control, and those influence on the other generation. People don't do what you expect, people do what you inspect. And if such behaviors are more acceptable, more behaviors would be seen. And I think there is something to that in the Caribbean. And until I think we get maybe a proper understanding of it, and we learn to weed out such actions and behaviors from our environment, we will continue to see a lot of that happening. And it's something we maybe need to give a close look at. Because as far as I see, while our religion is very important to us, even in the Caribbean, the cultural context seem to supersede the influence of religion in a lot of ways. So in the best of places and in the best of churches, you see the uprising, if you will, of some of the same cultural norms prevailing in our religious institutions. So I just thought I would say that. I think it's something to check, something to study, and something to resist. Otherwise, we would continue to deal with some of these problems, and the conversations we had last week, which I believe were so profound, maybe really also need to include this as some important factors for managing in the future. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. A word to the wise is sufficient. You have expounded well. Thank you, sir. All right, we will now transition into the other aspect of this afternoon's program. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening's program. She is a newlywed, and congratulations to our moderator, just a week old. And I hope that you had a wonderful honeymoon, and that we wish you a long life in your walk. She is an attorney at law. She is also a member of the Central Jamaica Conference Executive Committee, and she's a member of the Waterford Seventh-day Adventist Church. A very active youth leader she is. I speak of no other person than Mrs. Renee Robertson. So this time I'm going to hand over to Renee, who will take us through this afternoon's program. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you so much, Brother Spence. I'm still getting used to the name, you see, so it has not been changed here in Zoom, but in due time, I will make the transition. However, I'm happy to be your moderator for this evening in the Transforming Lives series. And I just want to say welcome to our youth director for the Jamaica Union, Pastor Dean Fletcher, I know Brother Spence would have introduced the panel, but persons would have just joined in. So I also want to say hello and welcome to Senior Pastor of the Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist, Dr. Samuel Bulgin. Actually visited the church about 2 years ago. It was
Look
fantastic.
at that.
My aunt actually goes to that church, Jacqueline Williamson. So I'm already connected, right? And senior pastor of Conyers SDA, we have Dr. Curtis Fox, who so eloquently expounded just now. My grandmother went to that church when she was over there as well. And so I'm well connected and I feel comfortable already. And with us also is the youth elder of Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church, Elder Julian Barnes. He's also going to be a part of the panel. And closer home is our youth elder in training, Sister Kayla Binns of the Spanish Town SDA. She's also a colleague and attorney at law. And so today we want to welcome everybody here from the United States, Jamaica, and wherever else in the world that you're joining with us. Towards the end of the program, the last 15 minutes, we will have a discussion where you can also join in. And so don't hesitate to put your questions through the feed and then we will talk about it. We'll hear from you and we hope that this session will be one that will be remembered. And so preparation for marriage. Whoa, I don't know why they put me in this spot because I'm just there. So guess what? The panelists, they will tell us so much and all that I need to know and everybody else who will be joining us today. And so before I go any further into segment one, I'm going to start with a quote from Ellen G. White, Messages to Young People. This quote is coming from the last paragraph of the last chapter in the book. It says, "True love is a high and holy principle, altogether different in character from that love which is awakened by impulse." So she's saying no infatuation, and which suddenly dies when severely tested. It is by faithfulness to duty in the parental home that the youth are to prepare themselves for homes of their own. Let them here practice self-denial and manifest kindness, courtesy, and Christian sympathies. Thus, love will be kept warm in the heart, and he who goes out from such a household to stand at the head of a family of his own will know how to promote the happiness of her whom he has chosen as a companion for life. Marriage, instead of being the end of love, will be only its beginning. And that, I think, is a fantastic way to start the program. And so Sister Kayla Binns and Elder Julian Barnes, the floor is now open for you, both of you, to discuss with us. What is it that you, Brother Barnes, Elder Barnes, look for in a woman? And Sister Binns, you will also tell us what it is that as women we look for in a man. So Elder Barnes, you want to take the floor first?
Sure. So I think one thing that's really important is that we have a compatible personalities. So someone who you can talk to and they kind of get how you think, or at least they can support you in whatever you're going through. So yeah, I think personality is key to building that relationship, and trust is also really important. So that just comes with over time. But yeah, I think trust and personality.
And that's all you look for in a woman. She doesn't have to be pretty. She doesn't have to be educated. Just trust and fantastic personality. That's all, Pastor.
No.
Women, by the way, before I play Cupid, Elder, are you already married?
No, I'm not. I'm not married yet. No.
All right, young ladies who are here, pay keen attention. So, answer for Elder Barnes, you were saying?
Oh, yeah, it's really important to like how they look too. Yeah, I would say that can get you in trouble sometimes though.
Yes.
Definitely get the groundwork first, and then yeah, definitely spiritual beliefs. If they care about, you know, the mission of God and pleasing God, not just for outward, but just for their um, personal goals too, to, you know, give back. I think that's important. Um, but yeah, I think there's really a lot that goes into it. Education is also a really a big factor because you want to see eye to eye on things. But me personally, yeah, I think relationship with God and compatibility, that's the most important.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Elder Barnes. And Sister Binns, how about you? What is it that you look for when you're seeking a partner?
Me personally, Mrs. Robertson, or young women in general, because I had some of my friends tell me what they look for in men. I could tell you what you want to know.
The question could be two-folded, so let's go with you first.
All right. Well, for me, it is very important that the gentleman that I want to be in my life for a lifetime is a Christian young man, not just a Seventh-day Adventist, but one who loves the Lord and one who is connected to God. There is a actual relationship with the Lord. Because
So can I
sometimes
stop you there? So far,
Sure.
Elder Barnes and Sister Binns have the first item. They're saying eye to eye right there. Just saying. Continue, Sister Binns.
So, I think the first thing for me is that I would really want that man connected to God. Because I think that a man who is connected to God and who loves the Lord will automatically know how to treat me because he'll be listening to the voice of God. And who is better to teach someone how to love than Christ, who is love personified? So I look for that. I mean, there are other things that I like to see in a gentleman, like humility. I like to know the person is very caring, loving, forgiving. As it concerns a long list, though, that's not me. I've decided some time ago that I'm gonna ditch a list, the idea of a list. And where my mind is now is I want God to provide for me what He sees best. I think that it's times that I am so limited in my thoughts, in perception, knowing completely what is good for me. And so where I'm at is thinking like, God, you know me best. You know what will happen in the future. You anticipate things that I do not. And so probably there are character traits that, I'm not thinking of, but you know that it is something that I need in a man. So my thing is like, God, you just provide what is best for me. Yes, there are things that I like, but when it concerns having an in my God to fit, surprise me, exceed expectations, I don't think I can provide better myself than God can provide for me. So yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you, Kayla. It's very important that we actually know what we're looking for. And Elder Barnes and Sister Binns have outlined the ultimate, the key thing that we should look for in a partner, and that should be a godly person. And so, but I have to ask you further though. Don't you feel pressured sometimes by the church, the society? I mean, I was pressured, and if I had yielded to the pressure, maybe by now I would have been divorced. But Sister Binns and Elder Barnes, at times the church can become very cumbersome. They pressure you into getting married. And Ellen White says about early marriages are not to be encouraged. A relation so important as marriage and so far reaching in its results should not be entered upon hastily, without sufficient preparation and before the mental and physical powers are well developed. So early marriages should not be promoted. But Sister Binns, when you are at church and they look at you sometime, don't they ask you, so when they go eat a piece of cake, how do you feel about that? Is Kayla here? How about
Oh, there she
Yes,
is.
Elder
you were
Barnes?
saying
You
what
can
you want.
speak.
Oh,
Let him
so-
go ahead.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. There is definitely pressure. But I mean, I try not to let that get to me because for the same reasons that you said, there's a lot that goes into that decision. And I think there's some things that you can't find out immediately. Like practical things that you wouldn't really know, like you know, if they can cook or how they are with like when no one's like in their house, are they tidy? There's a lot of things that you have to find out. But I think it's just a matter of investing in the relationship. And what you said about your self-development, that's really important too. Personally, I think it's good to have some time on your own, like maybe in a responsibility, maybe living on your own if you have the opportunity, so you can see like your habits and make sure that you're not too dependent. But yeah, I think taking time to really figure out who you are so you can know who you're compatible with, that's really important.
Right, thank you. And Sister Binns, what do you say to the pressure that society and the church places on young people, you know, who are not yet married?
Well, to be honest, Renee, I think that persons are more willing to ask you when you're getting married than to actually pray with you and for you about the matter. And I don't think that, you know, we actually do enough in terms of, you know, hold programs, have mentorship programs, or have meetings that deal with the subject topic enough with our young people. But you know, by the time you reach a certain age, it's when are you gonna get married kind of thing. I think the support system needs to be a bit different. Active praying. If there is an older person who is truly concerned about you and you know think that you're at an age where it's time for you to get married, they can pray for you, let you know that they're praying for you, and just watch the Lord work.
Indeed, indeed. And I'm stepping outside of the norm, but Dr. Samuel Bulgin, from the pastoral perspective, do you find that as leaders, we tend to try and play Cupid, or we tend to pressure our young people into getting married because that's what's expected? Dr. Bulgin? Oh, he stepped out. How about Pastor Dane Fletcher? Would you like to take that one?
I'm
Oh,
sorry
he's
about
back.
that, Sister Moderator.
That's okay.
You have to repeat that for me, please.
I will. I was saying from a pastoral perspective, Dr. Bulgin, do you find that as leaders, we tend to pressure our young people into getting married? We ask them the question over and over, you know, playing Cupid. How do you view leaders and the pressure they put on young people?
I think that what sometimes is considered as pressure is really the community expressing its desire for the young person. And usually, in my experience, that question is asked when they see the young person dating for an extended period of time. It's never just a question that is asked in isolation. It's usually in context. And so it's a veiled way of expressing their affirmation for what they don't think that it is appropriate for the community to apply pressure when they're totally aware dynamics of the relationship. You see the outside looking in from the out is not necessarily what is. And so in one sense, it can be viewed in a positive way of the community saying, we like what we see, and are you at the point where you made a decision and we want to be able to celebrate with you? On the other hand, it is superficial because they don't always know the intricacies of the relationship.
All right, thank you, Pastor. That was so diplomatic. I'm sorry, but Pastor Fletcher, have you ever felt pressured by your church, Pastor Fletcher, into being married and getting married? Have you?
Well, it can be said that I got married at a relatively late stage of life compared to others, but I'd consider the pressure that comes my way more or less the kind of substance of which I'm made. And I'll give you an example. If you put carrot in boiling water, after a while, it will become hard. It will become soft. If you were to put an egg in boiling water, after a while, it will become hard. So while people out of concern, should I say, would desire for me or for a young member of the church to be married, you should not be pressured by the person's idea. You should have a mind and understanding of your own, knowing your context, knowing exactly the relations that you share. And while you desire to be married, you should not choose to be married for the sake of being married. If you do not find, young ladies, someone who is willing to die for you as Christ would die for the church, I suggest you should not marry. And young men, if you do not find a lady who will be faithful to you as the church should be faithful to Christ, I suggest that you do not get married. So we should understand the purpose of marriage. The marriage relation should reflect the relationship which Christ has with his church.
Amen, Pastor. Amen. And so I say to any young lady or young man listening today, I witnessed a couple getting married. He was 83 at the time, 83 years old. And so never be perturbed or daunted by the fact that my friends are getting there and I'm not there yet. Don't be perturbed about that, because when God is ready to move, he will move in his right time. And just a final word on that. Sister White says immature marriages are productive of a vast amount of the evils that exists today. Neither physical health nor mental vigor is promoted by a marriage that is entered on too early in life. Upon this subject, altogether, too little reason is exercised. Many youth act from impulse. I'll add that from church pressure or societal pressure. This step, which affects them seriously for good or evil, to be a lifelong blessing or curse, is too often taken hastily under the impulse of sentiment. Many will not listen to reason or instruction from a Christian point of view. And so a word to the wise. Let us take it step by step and order our steps in the Lord, so that when he is ready for us, he will find us the right person. And so I'm going to jump over now to include Dr. Fox, Pastor Fletcher, and Dr. Bulgin, because we want to talk about now the biblical foundation for marriage. I know and here we have a fusion of cultural experiences. I know in the US, things have become very liberal. Here in Jamaica, we are still, it seems to be on the fences. Our leaders are not speaking out. But we want to talk about the biblical foundation for marriage. We want to talk about the importance, emotional and financial aspects and readiness. We want to talk about the principles of communication in marriage, what to expect on the honeymoon, and we're turning the heat up a notch, right? And maybe I didn't do it right. So I'm going to be talking to the gentlemen who have spent years in the field. And so we're going to talk about the biblical foundation for marriages. Who wants to take a first bite? Dr. Fox, how about you?
Well, I would say, based on what we sometimes call the law of first mention, the first mention of a number of things in the Bible suggests importance. The family and marriage is certainly one of them. The Bible says it was not good for the man to be alone. I would make him and help me, Genesis chapter 1. In Genesis chapter 2, we see God making the family, that is putting Adam to sleep and extracting from his side a rib and fashioning Eve around it and bringing her to the man. And when he saw her, he was enthralled. I sometimes say he said, "Whoa, man." And it was a wonderful experience. The Bible also says that they were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. In Genesis chapter 3, we saw a snake showed up and created a triangle in the garden that breathed an enormous amount of problems. But throughout Scripture, we see, like in the writings of the wise man, Solomon, all kinds of associations of and illustrations of marital intimacy. Let him kiss me with the kisses of my mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Drink water out of your own cistern, where he was talking about marital fidelity and sexuality. Let your hands always be filled with her breasts. Make love always and rejoice in the wife of your youth.
Pastor, you're well-read, man. Well, sound well experienced.
But in 1 Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, we see Paul talking about, I apologize, don't defraud one another.
That's fine. You're quoting Bible, Pastor. That's perfectly fine.
Making yourselves to fasting and prayer. And let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, which in this case means love making, and the wife also unto the husband. In Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 4, the Bible says marriage is honorable in all, and the bed from which we get coitus, actually the Greek word is koite, from which we get coitus, the bed is undefiled. Marriage is a good thing. And it's on, and it's wonderful, and it's blessed. So we see clearly that God expected. Of course, I left off Ephesians chapter 5, where it says submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God, and so on, and that the husband should love his wife, and the wife love the husband, and submit to him. So we see, to me, clearly that marriage, one, is God's business, that God created the thing, that God wants people to be so engaged. Paul says it will be an anomaly not to get married, and you should only do that if you're called, if you're a eunuch for the gospel's sake, and so on and so on. But otherwise, you should still get married. So yes, there is a clear biblical foundation that marriage is preferred for the people of God, that God made it and maybe wanted to bless humanity with this institution, and saw it as the foundation for the human family. I could go on, but I'll stop here. All
right, thank you, Pastor. Pastor, you quoted a Greek word that is the undefiled. Remind me of that.
Koite, from which we get coitus. Hebrews 13:4.
Very well. Pastor Fletcher, I mean, there are times when Adventists here in Jamaica, we have this biblical discussion as to whether the bed is undefiled, so what should we do on the Sabbath? We're talking real conversations now. Pastor Fletcher, you want to bite at that question for us?
What we should do on the Sabbath, we should have holy fun and glorify the name of our Maker and our King. That's what we should do on the Sabbath. We should participate in selfless activities on the Sabbath. So my desire as a husband, as a pastor, as a man, is to ensure that my wife be happy in the Lord at all times. Every husband should lead in that direction too. Happy in the Lord at all times. So if you are going to do anything that should cause your wife to not find joy in the Lord on the Sabbath, desist from doing that. I hope I answered you.
What does that mean?
You did.
What does that mean?
Pastor Bulgin, I was just about to ask the same question. What does that mean? Pastor, you want to explain further for Pastor Fletcher, or you want to
No,
continue?
I'd let him answer that,
No,
because I really wanted.
I'd say it this way. There are some couples who have a challenge with engaging in sexual activities on the Sabbath day. If it is that you as husband and wife consider that the way forward, that's fine. Now, one of the challenges we're having is that some people look at sex as something that is bad or not godly, but sex is a beautiful thing which comes from God. And in part, you may say you do it for fun, you do it for pleasure, it's something that you like. Now, I submit to you that as Seventh-day Adventists, we do lots of things on the Sabbath that we like. Some of us like to eat certain meals on the Sabbath. We enjoy them. Should we stop eating them because we like them? We find pleasure doing them? Is it sinful to eat your favorite meal on the Sabbath? No, it's not. So self is not, sexual intimacy is not something selfish. It is actually, and I'm going to be just blunt here. When, as husbands and wives, we have sexual intimacy, the objective is not to satisfy yourself, but to please or to satisfy your partner, your spouse, right? So when we engage on the Sabbath, we are actually becoming one, reflecting the image of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, all three in one. So it is husband and wife becoming one in the Lord.
Amen. I think my marriage counselor, Pastor Barnaby, did a fantastic job in our counseling, but I'm taking notes, you see, Pastor Fletcher. I'm still taking notes. And so that was a fantastic response. But Dr. Bulgin, my aunt, by the way, Ella G. Williamson, she's online. She said hello. I understand that you passed it.
Thank you very much.
Small world. What is
Yes.
what's the biblical
She still hasn't transferred her membership yet.
She told me she's still with you.
She still hasn't transferred her membership yet. Yeah, she's still my member.
Very well, very well. But what's your biblical foundation for marriage? What is your perspective?
Okay. Dr. Fox has done in providing a broad overview. And one of the challenges, or one of the observations that is made with programs like these, that we don't get nuance and specific. From the biblical overview that Dr. Fox has provided, I want to extrapolate a couple of things. Number one, marriage is not for children. And I think that is in keeping with the several of the statements that you read from Ellen White. Right. Adam had to feel the need for companionship before God fulfilled the objective that he had in mind in completing the creation process. Adam was working. He was naming the creatures that God had made. And while he was doing that, Ellen White says he looked around and there was no one like him around. And God now sensed that. So I think a man needs to be employed. extrapolating that out of the biblical foundation for marriage, because Adam was gainfully employed. He felt the need, and then God stepped in and filled the need. Another extrapolation from the biblical foundation is that sometimes we are too engaged in the selection process. In other words, as a pastor, I hear about the relationship when the couple has already been established their date for marriage, and they want to come and let me know when they are desirous of having counseling. And usually there's very little I can say in the process that will change their mind. So here is what is important. Adam was put to sleep. We today think that we have to go outside of our religious context and handle it on our own to select the partner, and then says, God, you better bless this.
Right.
No. God was the one who made Eve for Adam. And when he brought her to Adam, Adam said, wow, he was awed by it. And so one of the reasons why I think we get into trouble and marriages don't last is because we think we have to do it all by ourselves and then bring it to God and says, God, you bless this. And God doesn't work that way. We need to include God in the process from the very beginning, recognizing that the moment we get closer to the time we want to be married, we need to be praying more. Here is a route that is challenging. We find children, young people in middle school, maybe in grades 6 through 8, beginning to specialize. Why are you specializing at 13 and 14 and 15 when marriage is not on the horizon? During that time, it is required that you begin to generalize and have a wide range of friends. And the closer you get to marriage, the narrower the circle becomes, because marriage is a choice. And you can only have a choice if you're coming from several options. If you're specializing in middle school and high school and in college, and you graduate and now you want to be married, you have just dated maybe 3 or 4 people. When you don't know what you want, your choice might be flawed. And so God ordained marriage. He says he ordained it for the good and welfare of the human race. And so marriage is a good thing. And when entered into based on the biblical foundation that was so carefully outlined, we have a better chance of succeeding at it.
True.
I hope that's helpful.
Fantastic response, Pastor. I find that we are biblically sound. We are articulate in all of our theories as to how marriage should work, and marriage is fantastic. I agree. But why is it that I'm looking at statistics in Jamaica, pulled from the Statistical Institute? Marriages in 2013, we had 18,000 plus, but in 2016, I'm hearing a feedback. Theory that the whole marriage should work, marriage is fantastic, I agree. But why is it that I'm looking at statistics in Jamaica, the Statistical Institute? Marriage quality, okay, can I go on? Can I continue? 1,000 plus. In 2016,
also on Zoom. Right. Go on.
All right, it's better now. I'm back on properly.
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. I was saying in Jamaica, I'm looking at the statistics from 2013, we had about 18,000 persons being married. 2015, same, about the same range, but 2016, we're now to 17,000. 2018, 16,000 plus being married in Jamaica, and divorces in 2013, we had 2,400 plus. Then in 2014, we saw 1,000 plus. But then in 2017, we have 2,800. And in 2018, we have 3,400. That's in Jamaica. The divorce rates are climbing. Marriages are decreasing. We're talking about this fantastic union that God has designed for man and for woman. We're looking at America. In 2000, we had 944 marriages. But in 2018, we are having 782,000 marriages, and we're looking at that decline. A lot of young people, or generally persons, are not being married as much as they were being married in the 2000s in America, and divorces in America. In 2000, you had 2.3 million divorces. However, in 2018, you have 2.1 million divorces. Persons are staying together in America, which is fantastic. And so, but all in all, during this COVID period, we have heard the stories of how it is that divorces since March all across the world has been drastically increasing. I'm going to read an article from Bloomberg.
I wouldn't mind something.
Say again?
I wouldn't mind saying something about the Jamaican context.
Go ahead, Pastor.
In Jamaica, it may not be that persons in Jamaica are getting divorced at a higher rate, but that the court system may have put measures in place to expedite it. So that's why maybe you may see an increase in Jamaica.
You're perfectly right, because while divorces used to take for 1 to almost 2 years, it's been done now in 4 months. You're right. And so you're being informed, because court management services, you sit at the head. And so that's correct, Pastor. Your wife is keeping you up to date. And so but let me read this article though. Bloomberg. It says China's divorce spike is a warning to the rest of the world during this lockdown. Hear this story. As the coronavirus raged through China, Miss Wu, a housewife in her 30s in a southern province in China, spent almost 2 months in isolation with her out-of-work spouse. They fought constantly. Wu, who declined to give her full name because she wants to protect her privacy, ticked off a familiar list of marital irritants, including money, too little, screen time, too much, and housework and child care not evenly split. One particular annoyance was her husband's habit of engaging their 2 children in playing in the evening when they were supposed to go to bed. He's a troublemaker in the house, she says. I don't want to endure anymore. We've agreed to get a divorce, and the next thing is to find a lawyer. Now, this holy matrimony, this union, you want to think that, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But now, in the case where persons are spending more time with each other, we seem to think that it's the opposite. Pastor, what is it? What is the importance of financial? Let's start with the financial aspect of a marriage. We're going to talk about the financial. We've spoken about the spiritual, but what is the importance of financial, emotional readiness in a marriage, and how important or integral is the financial aspect? Sometimes we say, we quote it wrong in Jamaica, the love of money is the root of all evil. That's the correct quote. But at times, is money important in a marriage? Sometimes women will say, I love him, I don't love the money. What Pastor Fox, would you like to take that?
Yes.
How do we say to young people now, and marriages on a whole, financial stability, that is important? Let's talk about that a little.
Okay. A known calypsonian in Trinidad sang a song many years ago entitled "No Money, No Love." So I maybe go with that too. But let me talk about this a little bit. One, more marriages break up over money than over sex, or sexual issues. So money is a very significant common denominator in relationships, and it's more significant than we think. But it's not just money. It's not just about money, because money is really a symbol for a lot of things, a symbol for power and influence and dominance and patriarchy versus matriarchy or egalitarianism. So let me talk a little more about that. People tend to get married only when they have the economic viability for getting married. One of the reasons why couples are putting off marriage today is that it takes longer to become financially solvent. So people go to school, college, and sometimes graduate school, hoping for financial stability before getting married. So that is important. People tend to get married only when they think they can take care of one another, especially when in society it says the man is typically responsible for taking care of his family financially, even if the woman works. So there is that. It has been shown that money, economic viability is associated also with marital stability and marital satisfaction. In other words, people who have a lot of financial stress and or distress, unemployment and low income, unable to meet their needs, they tend to have a more difficult time with marriage. The research also shows that they are more likely to get divorced because of that financial stress. So we see maybe money is important, and that is to say, it is important in a marriage to feel like you're able to meet your needs, to take care of the things you want. Otherwise, the distresses only add to the other stresses that you have, which have a multiplicative effect, a compounding effect in terms of the other stressors, and therefore people walk out. So it is not just one issue, but there are a number of issues. There is a buildup of stressors that come with, say, successive unemployment on the part of a spouse, especially if that spouse is a man we're referring to. Somehow those things do not augur well for marital satisfaction or marital stability. I could say more about that, but that is really a factor and has been shown to be related to divorce and marital satisfaction as well. I could come back at it again. Yes.
Fantastic, Pastor. And that's the reality. As much as we try to escape the reality that money, is important, a lot of us, we tend not to want to accept that reality. But Elder Barnes, I would just want to bring you in a little bit. In terms of preparing for marriage, financially, how do you view it? If it is that you're in a relationship, do you think, leading up to marriage, you have a joint account, or during marriage, a couple should have a joint account and we spend from it, or separately? How do you view it, Elder Barnes?
Yeah, so I was actually talking to my dad before this about that, and I think money is very personal, and I think what was said with being financially stable is important, but I also think just having an agreement about lifestyle, because I think you can live different lifestyles and they cost different amounts of money. So having that established at the beginning is important. Are we buying new cars, or are we, saving this in this area? I think that's an important discussion to have. As far as the sharing accounts, I think as long as there is a good understanding of financial goals, it's a good thing to share, because it's a sign of trust. It's a sign of building together. But if you haven't gotten to that point yet where you agree on on the most important things, then well, maybe at that point you shouldn't get married. But maybe separate accounts is a good start, and you can work toward having.
All right, thank you, Elder Barnes. I see Elder bulging. He's nudging to say something. Tell us, Elder Bulging, Dr. Bulging.
Yes,
I'm sorry. How
but
do you,
yes,
how does it work for
yeah,
you
that's fine.
financially? How does it work?
Marriage is not just a legal contract that we enter into. Marriage, in the truest sense of the word, is a need meeting institution. And so we are to be married on multiple levels. In fact, one of the biblical references that God says, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. If you think in terms of what that means, the child could be helpless and has to be cared for. And so the child finds financial support from parents, emotional support from parents, social support from parents. So all of those support systems, when one is ready for marriage, is transferred from parents to the new nucleus for this new family. Not be sure that financially right away, because if you haven't talked about it, one of the things that we do in counseling, talk about family financing and the importance of understanding the centrality of it, because the emotional toll that it takes on the family unit when there's not enough resources to deal with the needs of the family is heightened. So when we're married legally, we need to be married emotionally, we need to be married physically, we need to be married financially. There needs to be a union across the board. The more united we are across the spectrum, the longer and more likely the relationship will be to last. I can tell you, I've been married for 42 years, and we have always had a joint account from the very get-go. When my wife's schedule allowed her to manage the funds, she managed it. But soon all of that changed, and I have managed the family finance now for probably about 40 of the 42 years. And we never have to wonder whether or not the family obligations are taken care of, because we have that understanding. Wife thinks that the husband is paying the bill, only to discover that there's a foreclosure note on the home, because the husband has decided, I'm not going to pay it anymore, and because he has moved on and saving that money and walks away with it. Now that is a bad thing. But what I counsel couples to do, that even though one person is managing the finances, there needs to be regular meeting or family meeting where both husband and wife is in tune with what is happening. Because you could walk out of the door today and you get knocked down and you die. And if that's the case, your mate doesn't know what is happening financially. So the management of the funds, while it might seem like a power position, it in a real marriage is not a power position, but a position of service and function. Somebody, and I tell couples, if whoever can have the time and the skill to manage the family finance, that's the one. It doesn't have to be the man, it doesn't have to be the woman. If the woman is more adept at managing, fine, go ahead and manage. If the man is, go ahead and manage. Think that husbands and wives need to have certain accounts over here, and you say, okay, you take care of the light bill, I'll take care of the food, you take care of the rent, I'll take care. No, this is a unit. We're functioning as a team, and we should be married financially. And if you cannot trust your mate,
and you cannot trust your mate.
Money.
Right. I those were sound words, Pastor. We're not hearing you right now. I notice you're still speaking.
No, I've stopped. Pastor Fox
you
was
stopped.
making
Okay.
a comment. Yeah.
No. I made a comment because I thought you froze.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I
Yeah,
was-
that
I
was the
helping
final
my
statement that I made.
Oh,
Yeah, that was the final statement that I made in terms of you cannot trust your mate, then that mate does not need to be your mate.
yeah.
Perfect point, Pastor. And Pastor Fletcher, I'm going to ask you to also give your feedback on this topic.
Preparing for marriage financially transcends the idea of having joint accounts. You may have joint accounts, but you have separate attitudes towards financing. So you should be united in purpose and also understand that while you may have two different incomes, two different salaries, you have one income. So whatever the wife earns belongs to the husband, and whatever the husband earns belongs to the wife. So when two persons decide to get married, bank accounts get married, wallets and purses get married. And as you prepare for marriage, observe the person's money management skills, and observe also if there are unreasonable debts that are coming into the marriage, because when you marry that person, you're marrying the person's debts too. So
Right.
be mindful of those things as you prepare for marriage.
Very, very important points from our pastors. And this takes us directly now into the aspect of the emotional compatibility. I know we always speak about do not be unequally yoked. And when we talk about that, we normally talk about the spiritual aspect of compatibility. Ensure that he's a Seventh-day Adventist, and ensure that anything outside of that, it is not acceptable. But to speak about unequally yoked, for me, it entails the emotional, the financial, the spiritual, psychological. It's all encompassing. But how important is emotional intelligence in our relationship? I'm going to ask Kayla to jump in on that question.
Emotional compatibility, Renee.
Yes.
What I think about that? Well, I think emotional compatibility is very important for the two. There should be meeting of the minds. Persons have different love languages. Probably the way how I choose to express love is not the way how the other person, like by my demonstration or by my act, is not the way how the person receives that as love. So probably, for example, just giving a random example, if I was grown, to think that just cleaning the house means that I'm a loving person, and the gentleman grows in his home to feel that constantly being hugged and getting kisses is his way of receiving love or understanding love, then I think I would have to learn what is his love language so that I can offer those things to him emotionally. And he would need to know what I require to offer those things to me emotionally. And when it comes on to emotions, it's not just how you feel as a person, but it's what the other partner feels, and also spending time in deep conversation and communicating with each other on a level where you can understand where they're coming from, what impacted them in terms of family life, things in the past, how they feel about a lot of things. And when you have a deeper understanding of how that person feels, you will know how to relate to them, how to be affectionate to them, when or when not to be affectionate to them. I don't think there can be a marriage or moving towards a marriage without you both trying to reach each other emotionally or having that understanding about each other.
I agree. I agree, Kayla. Very, very important, because when we look at relationships, sometimes or men, especially our Jamaican men, they may not have been grown up in the nuclear family. And so it's just black or white, you know, in terms of the intimacy, the emotional intelligence. They just think that once they come home and put food on the table, they put money in the wife's hand, it is enough, and just get on with it. And once, you know, the sex is in the marriage, everybody seems happy materially, all is well.
Renee,
Yes, go
I
ahead.
also think that it's important that each person understand themselves emotionally. You know, what bothers me, what is important to me, what are my triggers, you know, what really affects me, what affects me deeply and psychologically if you do this or do not do this to me. And I think also women must create a space for our men where they can express themselves emotionally and feel comfortable about it. I find that in our Jamaican society, there's this thing about and or men to have that what would tie to masculinity as being, you know, rough, not crying, not breaking down. And I think those things can lead to, you know, mental illnesses, the bottling up and all of that. I think women should create a safe space where whoever you're speaking with can speak to you about how they're feeling. And if needs be, cry. What's wrong if a man cry? What wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing, no
Feelings
wrong
too.
at all.
And I think when we try to suppress those kinds of behavior, we wonder how the men behave callous and cold. It's part of the training. So, you know, as a church, as a people, we need to encourage emotional intelligence with men. It's fine for them to get in touch with their emotions, just not in touch with a feminine side.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Kayla. I want to go back to Pastor Fox. We, as young people, we grew up on Hollywood, and we see where the man should tell you some Shakespeare lines and bring you flowers and do all of that niceties. But when the rubber hits the road, it's just black or white. Listen, girl, just get with it. I love you. You know that I love you. I'm not going outside the relationship. So, you know, take what you get. Forget about Hollywood. Pastor Fox, emotionally speaking, how is it that in preparation for marriage, what should young people anticipate, or generally persons on a whole, in terms of that emotional connection? Unmute your mic, Pastor.
I do this all the time. I think some of what we're dealing with, again, is cultural, right? I think we maybe inherited the stiff British upper lip, so to speak, syndrome. And that became very pervasive in the Caribbean. And so the way we do proxemics, the way we do distance and closeness or in a relationship in the Caribbean is different to some of the other cultures, such as America. So the part of our conversation is also impacted. Some of our conversation is impacted by Americanization, and Americanization happens in Jamaica and it happens in the Caribbean. So what we are dealing with is a sort of biculturalism here, where we are seeing what obtains here and we are comparing it with what obtains there. So long as we have some awareness to that. But yes, in the Caribbean, people are not given to a whole lot of emotional engagement. Many of us here could testify. We knew our parents loved us dearly, but as for hugging and kissing and saying, I love you and so on, there was not too much of that happening. And so we come out of those contexts and then we try to establish relationships, but we are new people in the new age, and we are influenced by, say, the Americanization of our culture, where people are freer to talk and share and say, I love you, and to cooperate together and to be flexible in gender roles and to lean on each other and to play in one another's hair. But that is not first nature for some people in the Caribbean. And it provokes today a lot of issues that we see. So what do we need to do? I think it's important for the two people getting married to have a good understanding as to where they are in that regard. To what extent do you wish to be expressive in your relationship, your physical closeness, intimacy? How much of a man cave do you want? Or how do you share space together? How much togetherness and affection time do you want or need? Because if you don't get that straight and you get married hoping for more, and he touches you only at certain times in the night when the lights are off, but he never reaches out to touch you any other time, then he may be forgetting something that is crucial, which I love to teach. It is this: if you want to be in heaven by 11, you have to start being kind at 7. And sometimes I say 7 a.m., sometimes 7 a.m. the day before. But you see, when we miss that point, we feel like it is the husband's responsibility to give to her husband every time he wishes. So he could be rough and crude at other times, but then he comes home and around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, he changes, and now he is nice and kind, and he calls his wife to bed, and she is way upset because she knows she cannot turn herself on that quickly. So she goes into this unconscious game we call uproar and say, nobody helps me this, I have so much to do, I can't come to bed now. What are you talking about? And so on. And that is a way to pick a fight, to say, I cannot have that level of social engagement now. What then do we make of all of this? I think it's necessary for people to clarify what their wishes and expectations are, because if they are discrepant, it could create enormous issues in their relationship. And somebody could feel as if their needs are not being met. I could say more.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. Say no more, because I am here cracking up when you mentioned man cave. Because my husband, before, when we were courting, he made it certain, he brought me, when we went to the house, he said, this side is my man cave. Everywhere else, you can do with it what you want, but here is my man cave. And so during courtship, I understood that principle, and I understood that to get him out of that man cave, there's some extra work that I would have to do. And so it is fantastic when you're friends and when you can talk about these things before marriage, so that you don't have any expectations that cannot be met during marriage. You're correct, Dr. Fox. And so moving on from the emotional aspect, we spoke about financial, but I still think so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before we go to the next phase, I want to say, in connection with that, we sometimes operate on the notion that if we have to tell our mates what we want, it's not as nice as if they just find out by themselves.
Right.
Now, so communicating what it is, how we want to be loved, is important. And when
Pastor, I'm going to go to communication, in a few. So I hope we're going to communication next, but you can finish up. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah. So it's important to be able to communicate what it is that we want and how we want to be loved. I think it was mentioned earlier that the emotion plays a very pivotal role in the health and well-being of the relationship. And so be mindful of that.
Very well. Thank you, Pastor. Now I'm watching the chat group. I just wanted to go back to financial connectivity, because Pastor Fletcher said, listen, though you are having two salaries, it's one income, and my money is your money and your money is my money. But some folk are asking, what if it is that you have dependent family members? And my money is your money, but is my money your mother money and father's money and relatives money? How is it that you work through that? You know, some persons are asking on the chat.
Now, while you look at finances together, you should budget for what you invest, what you save, and what you use to help family, friends, or any other person. The person's attitude towards finances and how you share with others may not just be a financial concern. It may be a general approach to other human beings and demonstrating love and kindness towards others. So it should be a part of your budget as to where should the need arise, you have funds to help relatives or family members and or even strangers. But I hope that would have addressed that point. Now I have another point I wanted to make earlier. If you are going to marry someone, do not marry someone who is not your friend. Marry your friend. Be friends first. The other thing that we should be mindful of is that persons started to wear masks long before COVID-19 and continue to wear masks. So be alert. People aren't always genuine. They aren't always whom they claim to be. And don't be too quick to say someone else is wearing a mask, because you yourself more than likely are wearing a mask. So be your real self, and seek to observe persons to identify where the person's values are, because from the person's values, you can observe the person's attitude in a more objective way.
Samantha says we all wear masks, Pastor.
Yes.
And could I just say briefly?
Yes, Pastor.
That the values are really crucial. So people can have a good heart and want to help, but their values about, should I be helping my parents, my aging parents? Should I be taking thousands of our dollars and helping my aging parents or grandparents, and so on? So people have different attitudes about those things, which can really create a bad situation. Some people have challenges after getting married, determining how much money they will give to the church. So those things are really crucial discussion before marriage, and not just discussion, agreement. Because if you get married and your spouse wants to spend money qualitatively different from the way you want to, you're going to have issues. And then you would start to move into a relative prenuptial or postnuptial agreement here to guard your money and your income and so on. And it festers all kinds of distrust and so on. So we got to be really careful with that. I just wanted to say that.
Pastor, you're correct, you know, because...
And in addition...
Go ahead, Pastor.
To that, the counsel I provide is that when it comes to the family finances and the need of either spouse's extended family, it should be a joint decision. So it's never the husband going out on a limb to help his family and the wife on a limb to help her family. I think it's both of you should sit together and decide together to what extent you can help, because you don't want to place your spouse in a position where he has to make a choice, or she has to make a choice between you and the family need and his family of origins need. Both of you should do that. And by this I mean, this is where the budgeting process comes in. When you label your money, you are then able to manage your finances based on your budget. If it's not in your budget, it does not exist. But if you don't have a budget, that you end up asking your money where it went, rather than telling it where to go. And you know the need of your family. He knows the need of his family. And so together, you can decide, well, this is a situation, how we should handle it. It's not him going off on a limb and you going off on a limb and say, well, this is my family. No, this is the family right here. And this is the family that is helping that family or the other family.
Well, Pastor, thank you for that. But I'm going to press a little further because I hear Pastor Fletcher speaks about budget. But what if it's a case where even though they have a budget, God forbid, his wife, something is wrong with her family members and the hospital bill has exceeded the budget, and Fletchers are the only family married couple that can actually assist with the family, and everybody's looking to the Fletchers. But your budget is only $10,000 and the hospital bill is $100,000. How is it? And you have $1 million, Pastor, in your bank account. How is it that, one would look at the pastor if he says, listen, I am really prepared for my household and only 10,000 and no more. How is it that the wife should look on the husband if that is the case that we take?
I don't know if someone else wants to respond, but since she called my name, I'd say it this way, that if we're having that challenge, it will cause me or the other party to think that one lacks care, because money is not as valuable as your loved ones. Money doesn't matter how much you have, it can't replace your loved ones. So if you were to look at it from that perspective and to see how well you can render care, and I submit, I may not even know how to guide people beyond that concept, right? But before you get married, pay attention to the person's attitude towards money, and note I say the person's attitude. It's not so much the amount of money that you have or the person earns, but the attitude towards money. Because you right now, you may be earning millions and your spouse may be contented by the fact to know that you earn millions. But the fact that you earn millions doesn't mean that the person will be satisfied or the person would want to spend the money in the right ways or in a judicious or prudent manner. So we should be careful about the attitude that we have towards money.
Right. Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, you notice I always say family finance. It is not the wife out on a limb. It's not the husband out on a limb. When we have an emergency, it is a family emergency, and the family rises to the occasion when the emergency occurs. So it's not about whether I have $1 million in the bank or just $10,000 in the bank and here comes an emergency. The fact of the matter is an emergency is an emergency. And when you have an emergency, you have an emergency meeting and you draw out on the emergency exigencies that you have there because that it's an emergency. And we're dealing with the family finance. And so family makes decision about the family finance.
Good. And I'm going to come to you, Pastor, but we are running out of time and we're on the topic of finances. But Pastor, quickly, is it that it's every need that, a family member comes to you with, you should provide? I mean, no. Or is it that you're going to be considered mean? You and your family can stay and have all of the money, but yet still you can't buy a book. you know, for my daughter, you know, a sister comes or a brother comes? Is it that you should just be giving away your money just like that, Pastor, because they are family, Pastor Fox?
Well, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to touch on. Now, to be honest, I don't have the answers to those questions, but I do have the conversations. So I feel like people must discuss this stuff, because you're right, your family has to exist, your new family, right? Your new husband or wife, and that family unit, the family of orientation, has to survive, and it needs a certain amount of money to make it viable. But you have extended family members who may come to you with their needs, and really the values you have about how to relate to the extended family will then factor in to these kinds of conversations. So if you both feel that you could help your mother in an emergency situation with hospital bill, then you can. But if you don't both share that, then you really have a conversation to have. And if you don't, you would help your mom, but you would begin to have an erosion in your marriage issues, so to speak. That erosion of love and trust, and where people would begin to guard and hide money and so on, because one needs to be safe, to feel more safe with having a certain money amount of money stashed away, and to take that to help mother-in-law may not be the thing the person wants. So whether it is right or wrong, to me, is immaterial. What is more important is that they agree, and if they don't, either they decide not to help or they will have marital issues. And if they decide not to help, they will have marital issues. And if they decide to help, they will have marital issues. It just is
Problem all
who gets
around.
to be upset. That's right.
All right, fantastic. We have to move on a little bit, because at 6:15, we're going to be taking questions from the floor. So gather your questions, you can start sending them in, and we will try to read them as best as we can. But Pastor, let's jump to communication. Oftentimes, the men may want to play, you know, video games. Some men would want to just be in their own mind. They just want to be quiet, and they don't want to hear any talking around them. Some women would want to just go ahead and do certain things without saying to husband, this is what, you know, we're going to do. How important is communication in our marriages, and in preparing for marriage as well?
For me, communication is based on three what I call important words. Communication should be open, it should be honest, and it should be constructive. And for me, constructive is the dominant word, because you've heard people say, I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. When I say to folks who say that to me, if it's going to get you to where you want to go, by all means do that. But sometimes, or we can tell it in a way that destroys the relationship or limit the quality of the relationship. So let's be open. In other words, we use language that allows us to share our perspective without the other person feeling that they're being attacked. So we shy away from using you phrases. We don't tell our mate, you make me mad, you make me angry, you never think about me. No, if you're feeling angry or upset about something, say, I am feeling angry right now. And hopefully if your mate is listening, your mate will say, tell me more about that. In other words, you don't say, you make me angry, but I'm feeling angry right now. Why are you, what's going on? Tell me more about that. Well, I'm feeling angry because I think you don't always think about the way I feel. Notice what you're doing. You're expressing what you feel. You're not telling him what he should do or what he shouldn't do, but what you're feelings, your emotions, and communicate that in using I phrases. Make sure that what you're doing is going to get you where you want to go. And this is happening in the context of the overall goal and objective of the family. If I want to feel close, if I want to feel loved, if I want to feel accepted, and being cold and calculated, name calling, is that going to make you get what you want? If it's not going to get you what you want, don't do it. Do what will get you where you want to go. And so I say that husbands and wives should lay a foundation as to how they want to communicate in a marriage, and stay with it, and always be looking for ways to strengthen the lines of communication. If you can always check to see when someone is listening, and that is when they use the boomerang response, or they use a drive-up method. When you drive up to a drive-up restaurant and you place your order, you don't see anybody, but somebody say, can I help you? And you say, yes, I want A, B, C, D. And they repeat that to you and say, yes, that's my order. If you go up to the window and you open up the bag and what you ordered is not in there, the next time you go there, or you might not go back there because they didn't do what you asked. And so it is the same within the marriage relationship. Make sure that the message sent is the message received, and that you are accomplishing the overall objective that you want. If you want your marriage to be a loving, caring environment, you have to communicate that in a way that contributes to that and not detract from it.
Excellent, Pastor. Excellent. Where time is just escaping us, and we want to try and touch on all the topics here, but in terms of communication, Pastor has outlined it in full, I believe. But at some instances, there are just some instances whereby persons may put on a facade at the inception of courtship, and closer to the marriage, you realize that what they say is not actually what they do. I'm going to put this to Caleb. If it is that, I haven't heard Elder Barnes in a while, but say you are engaged and you find out that all of the things that were communicated to you, they were not really who this person actually is. What is the next step? I mean, you put out some fantastic pictures on Facebook. We're getting married and you're on your knees and all of the fanfare, but then you realize closer to the wedding or in the relationship, you realize that this person is not who he or she said they actually was. What do you do in such a circumstance?
Renee, you're talking about deception and misrepresentation of character.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Wow, Renee, I wouldn't like to ever find myself in that position. I think that there are things that you can do to mitigate being in such a position. So I don't know if I can answer being in that position, but I can answer what would I do to mitigate or not allow myself to be in that position. I believe that marriage is something that should be approached prayerfully and should be approached with the Lord. I should be doing my personal prayer or praying about the situation, and I think the person to whom I'm gonna marry, I should be praying with him about the situation as well. I think we both should be seeking God's will for our lives, and I believe that even beyond ourselves, we should be having family members who are praying for us as well. And I'd like to believe that either of us would have that one mature person who is older than us, who we can speak to, that person who can have that level of objectivity on the outside, looking on the inside, and be able to give us honest advice. And that person should not just be experienced and older, but that person should be godly.
Kayla, I
believe-
am going to say to you, Kayla, if you are in the position where you find out that what you see is not what you get, that is the question to you, Kayla.
Renee,
What
no,
do you do?
Renee,
Run.
by God's grace, Renee, me can't reach there. What am I going to do
What
if
if
I'm
it
there? Renee?
happens? Right. What if it happens?
But Renee, it can't, Renee, by God's grace, it can't happen. It
Somebody
can't happen,
say
Renee.
run,
Me never down
somebody-
on my knees. God now go answer my prayer and tell me if something if it's in his will for my life or not. No, Renee, me can't let them check that with God. Me have to hold God at his words and at his standards. I have to.
All right, Sister Elder Kayla Binns. I see Samantha Allen. I see Samantha Allen say, run, run, run. That's what Samantha would do. But Pastor, Elder Barnes, sorry. What is it that you would do if you find yourself in such a predicament?
I think it would probably be a really bad sign that the other person didn't feel comfortable maybe sharing some of their insecurities or something that they felt ashamed about. They had to lie. I think if I was in that position, I would have to really think about, are those like non-negotiables? Like, are those things that I can't live with? Because there might be things that they're hiding that you could live with. But I think it's just important in the relationship to have some vulnerability, to let the other partner know that it's okay not to be perfect, so that they're open to sharing, because no one's perfect. But if they're hiding a lot of those things, then probably,
Run.
it's probably bad
But Renee,
to trap you.
Renee, if I might interject, Renee,
Go ahead.
running as Seventh Adventist Christians, we can't automatically run like that. There are biblical grounds for divorce. What if
No, we're
those
talking about preparing
deceptions
for
fall
marriage,
into-
though.
Before marriage, I think.
No, but you say, at the engagement stage and not already being married.
Right.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, well, in that scenario, first is burning off the engagement. There's nothing about that. If the deception starts early, what prevents that person trait from going back to marriage? What is what I'm with Queen? And you know, all times in the ring. If it is, I know, see what you're asking. I think I took it to mean like, you know, you're engaged
During
and
marriage.
I thought like married and then you find out. But if deception is there at engagement, what would prevent me just because I have a ring on my hand and a promise to not walk away from that? If you are walking to the very altar and you realize that there is something wrong, something that you cannot live with, and God is not in the midst,
Hello?
and it don't make any sense, I said, take off that dress and run. God will make other provisions. If deception is there from before the marriage and you know it's there, leave it alone. Walk away. That is your opportunity. That is God blinking the red lights in your face very clear. Run.
All right, Sister Kayla. Now, I'm going to say this because at times we see some red flags, but we pray about it and we hope that the person will change. And we pray for years. We stay in the relationship hoping that there will be a change. But listen, Ellen White says, a broken engagement. You may say, but I have given my promise, and shall I now retract it? I answer, if you have made a promise contrary to scriptures, by all means retract it without delay. And in humility before God, repent of the infatuation that led you to make so rash a pledge. Far better take back such a promise in the fear of God than keep it and thereby dishonor your maker. So there is no hesitation in running. I'm going to jump to the chat because it's now 6:15. Diane Bright says she wants to ask the question. My question to one of the pastors, when the time comes, of course, it's now. why some husbands in the church do not want to represent Christ in the home, being the priest in the home. Any of our pastors want to jump at that quickly? Pastor Fox, we haven't heard from you in a while.
At best, people fail in their witness outside of the home and in the home. So they may be wonderful people, they mean well, they carry a Bible and a quarterly that goes with it too. But the truth is, when in the home environment, people are dealing with their own realities, and sometimes they just haven't learned to be nice, or they think being a Christian means you got to be serious. So, you know, people say Christians are known for two things: long prayers and long faces, and that's the way they carry themselves when they're home. You know, honey, you got to enjoy this marriage, whether you like it or not. You know, and they feel like it is their sole responsibility to call the family for family worship, but their faces are always long, their countenance always low, and so on. So they are not nice people in the home, if you know what I mean. I'm saying sometimes that's a misunderstanding of what is expected of a Christian. And sometimes it is a lot of social learning that have taken place, that a man has to be really serious because Jesus is coming soon. But they forget to be nice, to be kind, to be gentle, to be playful. And when they do not have that lesson down pack, then they could be pretty hard-nosed at home. And I think that's what you're speaking to. And I would say to anybody, look out for that, because if they're like that now, they will be like that then. And if that's not the kind of stuff you want, you gotta stay out of that mess. Did I call it a mess?
Pastor, fantastic. Because we should be wrapping up at 6:30, but I want to also push it a little bit further. Pastor Bulgin, you understand that you have a youth elder who you heard through his spouse or parents that, listen, he is not walking according to the Lord. What is it that, and this is before marriage now, you hear that he's doing this, that behind closed doors. How is it that pastors and the church should deal with situations like that? He's an elder in your church. How is it that we should deal with those kind of situations? Pastor Bulgin.
I think you're tapping into I think you're tapping into the question of accountability. We all are called upon to be accountable, and accountability and responsibility runs together. As a leader in the church, you cannot and you should not be leading a life that is inconsistent with the principles of the church, whereas those that you lead are seeing and are being led astray by what you do. So the accountability factor is there, where as a pastor, I need to hold that elder, that member accountable to what the church stands for and what is expected of him or her.
Very well, Pastor. I'm going to also ask, should Christian couples enter into prenuptial agreements, Pastor Fletcher?
I have not.
This is coming from Cadian.
I have not yet discovered sound grounds on which Christian couples can enter into prenuptial arrangements, because the fact that you would consider such would suggest that there is an element of trust which is absent, right? So if you think that you have to consider prenuptial arrangement, you should ask yourself, do you really trust that person? I can tell you this, that when I decided to get married, I understood, I firmly believe that if something should go wrong with me, or if I should die leaving a part of my estate for my mom, that she would get it. Or even if I do not, and my wife understands that I really would want to give something to my mom or my father or any other person of my family, that she would do it. That's my belief, right? And I enter marriage, and I believe others can too, believing that if you should lose everything to that person, that is okay, right? So if both of you have that perspective, then you will find some way to balance it out.
So you're saying to prenups, Pastor?
I said I have not yet, and I want you to listen to me carefully. I have said I have not yet found a sound reason. So if there is a sound reason for it, I have not yet found it.
Okay, so that person who is
Maybe
asking about
the
prenup,
more experienced campaigners have found it. Referring to Dr. Fox or Dr.
I see here where Arnold of Freckleton is saying that prenups is an indicative. It indicates that there's a lack of trust in the relationship.
Suggesting.
Right, right. And so I see here also where Mr. Fred Robertson, my other half, has asked a question. I think I have to read it or else I can't go home today. But as God is one, as God is one but individual, should the woman and man be one but individual as well? So as God is one but individual, should the woman and man be one but individual as well? And I'm looking at a quote from Messages to Young People, Divine Love. It says, Ellen White says, in your life union, your affections are to be tributary to each other's happiness. Each is to minister to the happiness of the other. This is the will of God concerning you. But while you are to blend as one, neither of you is to lose his or her individuality in the other. God is the owner of your individuality. Need we say more on that question, Pastor?
No.
No,
I think not.
While we look at that,
you're all
if you should want the person to become so one to the extent that the person becomes a replica of you, after a while you will stop liking that person.
Indeed, indeed. So someone says, Sister Bright says, I think so, Brother Fred, but our individuality does separate the oneness. And so I also want to touch on the fact that though we have so many discussions on marriage in our church, I think the Adventist church may be one of the most academic church that you may find anywhere else. You know, we talk about so many different issues and educate our young people, but yet still Samantha is saying that the rate of divorces in our Seventh-day Adventist church, it's alarming. You know, what is in our final words to the members here, because we close off at 6:30, and I'm going to give each pastor and also Kayla and Elder Barnes the opportunity to say to all of our listeners, what is it that we're doing wrong? What is it that we need to do right? So that if it is that we decide to take on marriage, you know, we will ensure that it works. Also, Pastor, before we jump to that final question though, I noticed that someone in the chat did say, listen, you people always talk about marriage, but singleness is sanctified as well. And I'm happy in my singleness. And we don't want to exclude anyone who, you know, because I was there about 2 or 3 weeks ago and I know what that felt like. And before that, you know, I used to say the same thing. But, you know, Pastor Fox, some people say, listen, marriage is not for everybody. So get on with it and stop telling us that we need to be married. How do you comfort or say, affirm that position to a person who is single and online today?
Marriage is a good thing, but marriage is not necessarily for everyone. And marriage may not come to you, and you must only get married when you think you have that call. All right. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread, and a lot of people do. So it's better to wait one's turn if it will come. Speaking to a group of ladies some time ago at a church, I said to them, some of you all would not get married for many reasons, and here are they. And a year and a half after my wife attending at a secular hairdresser. Her hairdresser told her that she heard that her husband said that to some ladies a year and a half ago, because they never seem to have forgotten it. The truth is, not all of us would get married. Some people would have the opportunity, except you decide to settle just for anybody. You may not find the eligible partner to get married to. So I think we owe it to a number of young people to hear from us that they could be okay with who they are, whether they're married or not. That's the first important lesson. And then if you should get married, here are some things that are important. I believe in giving that message. I spend a lot of time giving it. I feel people should learn to be contented in their state, whatever that is. I personally believe that.
Thank you, Pastor. And so in closing, the high divorce rate that is in among our church today, with the societal pressure and the church pressure as well, what is it that you'd want to say, starting with Elder Barnes, to young people or persons in general? You are not yet married, you're preparing for marriage. What are some of the advice that you'd want to give to caution persons in ensuring that they build that solid foundation, you know, so that their relationship will be anchored in the Lord? So that question will be thrown out to everyone. And if you want to give your final comments, you can also do so. Elder Barnes?
Sure. I think something that's really important nowadays is that society isn't necessarily on our side as far as purity and even success in marriage. So I think it's very important to realize that, so you can guard your mind, guard what you're watching, guard your emotions, and just like the pastor said, being strong in your foundation with your relationship with Christ, because then you can have a strong identity, and then I think that will carry on into your marriage. So yes, having that strong foundation with Christ and protecting yourself. But
Thank
as far
you.
yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, as far as marriage, just being prayerful about it and hoping that God will show you the right person.
Thank you so much, Elder Barnes. Sister Elder Bint?
So you want to know tips in terms of preparing for marriage, young persons preparing for marriage? What way to go? That's it, Renee?
Right, so that they can have a sustainable relationship.
Okay, I believe that if you're really seeking marriage, and generally this goes for your life, you must put God first. But I think it's something that should be approached very prayerfully. If you used to pray 2 times per day, try and pray 4. Don't leave out God out of anything. Ask him about everything. Go to the Bible, try to read and try to find time to hear God's voice as it concerns the matter with you. Also, we have been aided by books by, our prophetess, Ellen White. We have the Adventist Home. It's a good read, and it's a good way to understand roles of both the husband and the wife. And it also gives you a taste of what you are preparing for, or the type of character traits that you should be developing. I find that a lot of times we talk about what we want in a partner, but it's also important to have a conversation with yourself. What is desirable, from within you, character traits that you ought to have. And as a person in preparing for marriage, you ought to be building on your character as well. So find a way to tap into Christ and allow him to teach you to have the fruits of the Spirit and all those things that will fit you for marriage. As I talk to experienced persons as well, experienced godly married persons in the church that can guide you. Find somebody that you're comfortable to speak with on the matter of marriage and to tell them how you feel about who you feel and have open and honest conversation with that person. I also think that it's important to not exclude your family. You know, if there's ever persons that know you well, they are your family members. Sometimes they can see when somebody is not right for you, when you're too close to the situation and you don't want to let go just because you're afraid of singleness and you're afraid of being alone. You know, God has a time for everything, a time and a place for everything. And when it's your time, it will happen. Seek the advice of your parents. If you have godly mother and father, ask for their prayer, have open and honest conversation about them with marriage, learn from them, and then listen to them. I think it's very important to listen to your parents at that stage. When you're courting, listen to the godly advice and, you know, have that constant and open communication. So those are just some of the things that I think, you know, it's practical. And I like how the young man spoke about guarding your soul. It's very, everything is over-sexualized in our society now. And it's about like jumping the gun. It's important to try as best as possible to maintain purity and to allow the Lord to safeguard our thoughts so that we can truly enjoy marriage in the way that we ought to. So guard well the avenue of the soul. If it means cutting off certain movies that you normally watch, if it means certain programs that you listen to, then do so. And even those friends that might be involved in non-marital relationships that are not healthy and they're engaging in things that, you know, not clean for your mind, be careful of the conversations that you get into and how much you allow their influences to get in your personal space, because you have to be serious about this thing. It's you and God and the person.
Amen. Wow, you know what? I'm going to even tweak this question a bit for pastors, because I thought Elder Barnes and Elder Binns, I you know, for me, their responses have done, they've done justice to the question. But I see Samantha Allen says, persons who are preparing to get married, please to have a deep sex and sexuality talk. The SDA Church shies away from this, but brethren, this aspect is destroying a lot of marriages these days. And when I heard what he said, I looked back on my script and I realized that what I missed a question. What both men and women should expect out of the sexual experience on their honeymoon. That was also a topic for discussion. So Pastor Fletcher, I'm going to throw that one out at you. And then we will, you can also in that, you know, put your closing thoughts to us as well.
Well, Renee, it's more than the honeymoon, because the honeymoon is just for a short period. It's what happens over the lifetime that is of essence. For some people, the honeymoon is not as sweet sexually as is desired for different reasons. There may not have been readiness, especially if you were true to God and not engaging as God expects of us. So it's not just about the honeymoon. My concern is that there should be openness to discuss human sexuality, to understand that you should explore one with the other, that the greatest sex organ that you could ever have is really your brain. And somebody else said that it's your skin. So you should be willing and ready to communicate openly, freely with your spouse about what is it that you like. And well, Dr. Bulgin said some things are better left for exploration. And when the person discovers it, the person may say, well, I've hit the jackpot. You should be open to explore and to communicate freely and clearly one with the other. So that's what I'll say about sexuality in marriage. You should establish clear boundaries. What is it that one person sees as a taboo? You should have that discussion. One thing a person may see as taboo, another person may not see it as taboo. Now, if you would want to have a certain exploration and the other party considers it a taboo, you should assess to yourself, would you be satisfied to have that desire unmet? Can you live like that? Right? So these are some of the things that you should consider, rather than entering into marriage and have that desire, and you want to go and fulfill it elsewhere. So these are some of the things that you should consider as you plan for marriage.
And your last and final comments or encouragement advice to young persons preparing.
Final comment is this, that while you seek or desire to be married, you should firstly enjoy life as an individual, enjoy life as a person, seek to be your best self, find fulfillment all by yourself as best as you possibly can. Do not look for happiness, do not look for fulfillment, do not look for satisfaction in anybody else. Enjoy your own company. That's one of the things that I want to leave with you. And then I cannot leave without sharing this quotation from Ellen White. It's in the book Adventist Home, page 45. She says, and I quote, "Let the questions be raised. Will this union help me heavenward? Will I increase my love for God? And will it enlarge my sphere of usefulness in this life? If these reflections present no drawback, then in the fear of God, move forward." End of quote. My beloved brothers and sisters, marriage is it is a wonderful experience. But while we all may desire to be married, the truth is that not all of us may get married. Whether you are single or married, your objective or purpose in life is to be faithful to God. And if we are faithful to Him, He who knows how to give good gifts to those who love Him will not withhold any good gift from you as long as you walk uprightly. God bless you.
Amen. And Pastor Bulgin, before you give your comments to or advice to persons who are contemplating or preparing for marriage, I also want you to address the question. If it is that you're courting and your family, I heard Kayla she said that listen to your family. And I also saw someone on the chat group saying, yes, hearing from your family is good. But how imperative is it for you to always listen to family? What if it is, too intrusive and you think that your family, they're getting too much involved in your relationship? How do you treat with such a situation? That's question number one. And question number two is just to give some advice in your final closing.
It all depends on the family. Very few family members would not have your interest at heart. So if I am not sure what they're talking about when they talk about a family being too intrusive, because historically Abraham sent his trusted servant to find a wife for Isaac, and Isaac's marriage to Rebekah is reflective of a real functional, lasting marriage. And so while it is good to family members be mature, what to take and what not to take, and to exclude your family from this all-important decision in your life could be a mistake, because when you marry, you're linking two families together, and you will have to live with the family for the rest of your lives. So don't alienate your family because you think they're being intrusive. They might be well-intentioned, but you have the ultimate responsibility of determining what is it that you take and what it is that you. My final word is coming out of the biblical foundation, and that is, there's a line in scripture that says, "What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder." We cannot make a decision for marriage on our own and then bring it to God and says, God, join us. No, we must discover what are the principles that God has put in place when we are establishing relationships and moving towards marriage, and follow those directives as closely as possible. Then when we come to the pastor and the church and we go through the marriage service, we know that the marriage is joined by God, and not simply us taking our gift to the altar and says, Lord, I want you to accept this. No, he rejected Cain's offering and he accepted Abel's. So in order to have a successful marriage, as we prepare, find out what it is that God wants for you, follow those principles, and you can come to the wedding service and know it's a marriage that God is joining. Don't just take it for granted that the joining takes place when the minister declare, I now pronounce you husband and wife, you are joined in heaven, and God is blessing that. No, it doesn't necessarily work that way.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Thank you. These are sound advice. I think you'd have to pay. How much US do you have to pay to see a counselor
enough money?
Holy, and we're getting it free here. And so, I hope that we will be immersing ourselves into these topics, into these advice that we're getting. Finally, though, Dr. Fox, I see here where Diane Bright says, if a son finds it difficult to leave his mother's side, it will be difficult to man up as a Christian husband. If he doesn't love his mother, he cannot love his wife. Now, you want to take a bite at that one, Dr. Fox, and then at the end, you can also give your admonition to the young persons listening. And I still see on the chat where they are still talking about prenuptials and the perspectives on that. So I don't know if you want to also take a stab at that one as well.
Well, normally people who discuss prenuptial agreements are people who have loads and loads of money. So we have to understand that. Basically, people do that to protect the transfer of wealth when they get married. So really, people who don't have a whole lot of money don't discuss that stuff. All right. So if I am marrying with billions of dollars to a woman, I want to be careful lest I throw my pearls to swine, so to speak. That's where that stuff comes from. But I agree with the other pastors who have said, look, if you're getting married and your money is not getting married, then your marriage is, in my head, relatively questionable. That is not to say that everybody who has enacted a prenuptial agreement would not have a good marriage, but I see some issues with that. And the basic issue is a lack of trust and the willingness to fully invest and to make oneself vulnerable in the context of their new relationship. So therefore, I wouldn't advocate it, but that's just me. I don't sell advice to people. I just have conversations with them. They make the decisions. All right. The other question was about, remind me.
The other question is the son not wanting to leave, or how it is that he treats his mother would be indicative of how he'll treat his wife.
The task of marriage, the first task is accommodation, which involves, for most people, a leaving of the valence of a certain relationship, normally the parental home, to establish a new relationship. You can't have a new relationship without some adjustment in your relationship with the parental home. It cannot happen. And so the entrance and exiting of people from any relationship provokes some change, which really is difficult for some parents, for example. So they hold on, they have problems launching their children. What they are really saying is, I have difficulty adjusting to this new change. So if parents hold on tenaciously and they don't give the son or the daughter the opportunity to establish the new thing with some new person, then there will be problems. So there has to be enough differentiation from your family of origin to have a good relationship in your new family of orientation. If you don't do that, you're going to have trouble. So, and if the wife, let's say, is jealous about the nature of the relationship between the husband and his parents, and if indeed he is really insanely close and dependent on his mother or his family, sometimes for financial reasons, sometimes for emotional reasons, then they're going to have issues that they will struggle through. So the best thing to do is to work that through before you get married, because it will show up the day after your honeymoon, if not the day before, and you don't want that. So I could say, again, I could say more about that, but that's something we would not be able to solve now. Let me talk about the sexual thing. Perhaps because we want people to behave a certain way, that is chaste. Perhaps because the church has inherited negative attitudes towards sexuality from the centuries, all the way from Plato and the philosophy of dualism, coming to us through St. Augustine, the Bishop of Hippo, and St. Thomas Aquinas, and all the others who wrote very negatively about sex, such as the purpose of sex is to have children, and the purpose of children is that people would be so busy raising them that they wouldn't have time to think about sex. By the way, that's what the theologians were saying. That today, what I think we try to do is to keep people from having sex too early. And one of the best strategies we have employed as parents and as church people is to communicate this: sex is evil, sex is bad, sex is nasty, save it for the one you love. And you would see that for a lot of people, they get married, and when it's time to share sex with the one they love, there is so much baggage, more carry-on baggage than American Airlines plane on a busy weekend, all right? Because in the minds of people, we have communicated a lot of negativity in terms of the attitude towards sex. And it's difficult to reverse it or to turn it on a dime, and people enter into marriage and struggle through marriage and sexuality, thinking all kinds of evil about this whole thing. We started talking about that, and I didn't have the time to talk, but I maybe should have told you. I was doing a seminar in London some time ago, and I was talking about sexuality, and a man, he got up and he said, "Pastor Fox, do you believe you should have pleasure on God's holy day?" So I said, "My brother, I just came from a sister's house and we had a lot of pleasure." I said, "Everybody at the house ate a lot of food." I know. I am a provocateur. We ate a lot of food, so much, too much really, and we had a lot of pleasure. He sat down. He didn't like that answer, of course. Then he came back to me and he said, "Dr. Fox,
should we have sex on Sabbath?
Is sex pleasurable?" I said, "My brother, there's no way in which it is humanly possible for me to answer the question as to whether or not sex is pleasurable for you." The people laughed. So at the end of the service, he told me, "Dr. Fox, the reason why people shouldn't have sex on the Sabbath is because when they are having sex, they use all kind of bad words and things." So then I finally understood where my brother was coming from. But instead, sex is evil and antithetical to all things good and Christian and lofty. That's the kind of message we have sold. We've been sold this mental bill of that is dangerous for our health and for our well-being. We should change the message. I believe in changing it. Right now, in fact, I'm teaching a class on sexuality for 2 weeks, believe it or not. And we just finished the first week. Okay, French, so what would I say to the couples? What would I say to young people? They're single and unattached. I heard my brother say, so I wouldn't multiply words on the subject. Friendship first. Every human being is valuable, and God has given us a lot of possibility for friendships and interactions that are wholesome and meaningful and satisfying. And every one you could get, embrace it. You do not have to hurry into a marriage. A lot of people get married because they cannot have good friendships. They've lost the art of doing it, and they feel this need and a pull out from close, satisfying relationships. I think you should do friendship first. And if indeed you have the opportunity to change it because you met a best friend that you want to share the rest of your life with, heaven is smiling on you. Embrace it. Embrace it and then go forward. Until then, go do something else. Plant corn, but don't marry a turkey just because you want to get married.
Amen.
Pastor, I don't know if you have a crystal ball over there, or you heard something through the grapevine, but I see Pastor Fletcher, he's laughing uncontrollably because I met my husband 15 years ago. We were friends, like real, good friends. And, I really became interested in him when I saw how well he took care of his mother. And I, God bless her soul, but I really became even more interested in him when I saw, how it is that he mothered his mother. And so I'm going to leave these final words with us today. True, from Ellen White again, Messages to Young People, page 450. She says, true love is a plant that needs culture. Let the woman who desires a peaceful, happy union, who would escape future misery and sorrow, inquire before she yields her affections, has my lover a mother? What is the stamp of her character? Does he recognize his obligations to her? Is he mindful of her wishes and happiness? If he does not respect and honor his mother, will he manifest respect, love, kindness, and attention towards his wife? When the novelty of marriage is over, will he love me still? Will he be patient with my mistakes? Or will he be critical, overbearing, and dictatorial? True love, true affection will overlook many mistakes. Love will not discern them. And so I say to young people, friends first. Friends first is the ultimate goal. And then you can always be lovers thereafter. And without Christ in the vessel, whatever storms that come your way, you'll not be able to smile. And so I see the folk, they're asking for a part 2, pastors. I don't know, Elder Spence, you have to navigate that one because we didn't get to touch on baggages and abuse and sexual abuses that you carry into the relationship. We didn't get to touch on those topics. But I want to say to any young person out there, or persons, you may be in your 40s, 50s, almost 80, and you still have the desire to be tied to someone else. Remember that love is divine. It's designed, the marriage is designed by God as well. And so as all our pastors have said today, ensure that whenever you find that one, you would have prayed earnestly and you would have had a connection with God, and God would be the one who would have told you and said to you in no uncertain terms that this is the way that you should go, walk ye in it. And so it's bye from the transformation series for this week. I believe Elder Spence has the final words. It was a pleasure talking with all you gentlemen, and Sister Kayla Binns. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Renee, and thank you, Dr. Fox, Dr. Bulgin, Pastor Fletcher, Elder Barnes, and Elder Binns. Pretty humorous, Dr. Fox. Well, I'm telling you, and I need to remind you, add to your calling, comedy. Very good. You made the program extremely beautiful this evening, and we thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for the wealth of information that was gleaned. And that's what the program is geared for. I will be having discussions with Dr. Bulgin on the part 2, and we will let you know soon we have a decision to what our viewers want, and we seek to facilitate that as much. I'm very thankful to the moderator as well for what I consider to be her doing a pretty good job in moderating and holding things together and having the subject being fleshed out in a gooder way as it could have been. So thanks again, Renee, for that. Next week's program, Dr. Bulgin, do you want to tell us what next week's program is going to be on? Dr. Bulgin, you there?
I forgot.
If Doc is not there, then I listen. Oh, right. I see. You were laughing, so you couldn't talk. Go ahead, Doc.
No, I said I forgot.
Okay,
I'm drawing a blank on what.
It's on divorce and remarriage. Divorce and remarriage.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes,
Oh,
divorce and
wait.
remarriage. So, Doc, you want to give us a little insight?
Yeah, okay, yes. But I was wondering whether or not our panelists and our moderator would be willing to continue this topic next week, and then the week after we'll go into that, because I think from the feedback that we're getting and the fact that we have not completely explored all of the areas, that it might be a good continuation rather than trying to schedule it a couple of weeks down the road. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've seen the chat saying please do, and people are saying they do agree. So once our viewers are giving us this positive feedback, then I think we should. I will speak with all the panelists, members of
the participants.
Arrangement.
Yes.
Nuptial arrangement does not facilitate such.
Right, and I also have another program. I'm so sorry.
No,
look at
You
that.
can still go on. You can still go on, though. Perhaps you can, improvise.
I was joking about my prenuptial arrangement, but let's discuss how best we can work out something.
Yes. All right. What we do, Pastor Fletcher and Renee, we will have a dialogue off air, and then we'll come back by Tuesday with the information.
Very well. And we have a closing prayer that will be offered as well by Elder Barnes. So you can give your closing announcement.
So thanks again to all our technical team, Sister Annette, who has been managing things behind the scene for us. I want to thank you. And we apologize for the opening montage and the closing montage this week because we're having major internet issues here. So we're unable to bring it to you. But God's willing, next week we shall. Elder Barnes, will you close us off this prayer, please?
Yes. Please bow your heads and close your eyes. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us to come together, even across borders and as one church to talk about this important subject. And I just pray that all this valuable information that we've received from the pastors and from each other, that we can factor it into our decisions, and that we can use this knowledge to make the best decisions for ourselves in marriage. And I pray that you be with every single person here who's considering marriage, and I pray that you guide them to the right spouse, and that we can rely on you to have successful lives, whatever you call us to. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
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 Amen. Renee, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I'm going to urge our young people who have not yet, found anyone there. You can private message each other here, just saying. A good forum. We're all equally yoked in the denominationally. So you're free to message, all right?
We're still live on